Before we get into today's episode, it's time for a School of Morton Minute. That's when we take 1 minute from the past episodes and allow you to hear it right here. Episode 2, last week, WWE Hall of Famer Ricky Morton reflected on his feud with Nature Boy Ric Flair.
You played a lot of it by ear. And Dusty, he wasn't the kind of, Dusty would write programs out, but you see, he wrote the one out with Flair and Magnum TA. So now it has to go with Flair and myself. It just happened there on TBS when I slapped Flair. I mean, you know what? That was really not. Well, how can I say this? Because nowadays, because they script it, it wasn't scripted. It was right there. I slapped him. He hit me back, and we just went to the rink. We just went with it, and man, boom! It got right there, and I beat him up on that. And then that was on a Saturday. On that Tuesday, we're in Greenwood, South Carolina, doing a TV show, and I'm wrestling a guy by the name of Tony Zane. And here comes Ric Flair out. Gosh almighty, here we go again.
And Ric Flair was decked out in a suit that day.
Oh, you remember.
And you two tangled.
Oh, yes, sir. We sure did. Our business is not just easy. When Rick dropped the knee on the back of my head, he broke my nose. If I'm breaking my nose, it led into where he scraped my face. It was all in the same area. The pretty boy that wasn't pretty no more. And boy, did we do business. I mean, we sold out arenas, and that's what it was all about.
That is from episode 2, available in the archives at rickymorton.podbean.com and at iTunes. If you're enjoying this, subscribe, share, tell a friend. Welcome to the School of Morton podcast. I'm Scotty Campbell with WWE Hall of Fame inductee Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express. Hello, Ricky.
Hello, Scotty. Another week. Looking forward to it, man. Ever since we did this one last week, I was looking forward to it and everything. But you know what, man? I got a lot of comments off the part about I thought Missy Hyatt was giving to me a compliment.
When she said that she looked like a modern-day Ricky Morton, I believe is what she said.
Well, I don't know, but you know what I got to say to Missy? I still love you.
Woo! Woo! That's got a good sound to it.
Cool. I love Missy.
She's created a lot of memories. She's been very good at what she's done.
Yes,
over the
sure
years.
Has.
A lot of contributions to the business. Well, coming up shortly, we're going to have a very special guest this week.
He's one of the greatest managers ever.
Of all time.
Baby.
You'll find out who it is very soon. First,
let me start off here with something here, because I like to answer a lot of things, and I had a lot of funny memories in this business. People ask me about them all the time, but it's so many. It's like me writing a book. I don't know where to begin to write a book out, because I'm going to leave half of it out because I can't remember it. A lot of it, then all of a sudden it hit me one day. But I was watching some old wrestling films, and my boy, my son Kerry, he likes to go back through and look at a lot of stuff, especially when I was young. And I never forget this. This is so funny. And that's one of the other funny memories when it happened. I told Kerry about it. I was partners with Sonny King live. Now, you got to understand, TV in Memphis came on live. Every Saturday morning, it was 2 hours live on Memphis TV. The ratings were so good that the TV station gave them all the time. I mean, it was, buddy, everybody watched that. I never forget me and Sonny King. That's when me and Sonny did the thing, and he turned babyface to be my partner, and we're doing real good. And Sonny always wore shirts down to like his knees, so I never would get on TV, and we're in the ring, and all of a sudden, Sonny just stops, and he just looks at me right in my eyes. And you have to know Sonny King, and I never forget Lance Russell saying this over there. Sonny goes, Ricky, I forgot to put my tights on. So, man, this is live TV. And all of a sudden, Sonny jumps out of the ring, and Lance Russell going, well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where Sonny King just went to. He just left for, oh, here he is. He's back. But you have to be there to understand our business, to be a part of that, to know that Sonny King walked out on live TV with no trunks on to put underneath his shirt.
Oh, wow.
Great.
Now, that's the inside story.
Yeah, but, man, I got 1,000 of them that we could do. What's going on with you today, Scotty?
Well, I wanted to get your opinion on something. Okay, now you know that I grew up watching Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yes.
And a part of that, I remember a particular match where Ricky Morton was facing Al Snow.
Uh-huh.
And at one point in that match, the ring opened up, and out came...
It was a cage,
Yes,
too.
sir, you were.
Uh-huh.
Steel cage. And there were a lot of people there, and I remember seeing this guy popping up through the ring, straight up. We called him Unabomb.
Sure did. Now, do people understand about our business now, Scotty? It always comes back around. You watched Monday Night Raw last night?
Yes, indeed.
Well, what do we see? Who was the return back to WWE, but it sure wasn't a Unabomber?
But it was the same fella.
Kane.
Yes.
Oh, did you see the people go crazy? These are angles that we done years ago. But let me tell you, people still love the excitement. People still love to be surprised. People still love to be shocked. That's what we do in our business.
And that's exactly what Kane accomplished on Monday Night Raw this week. So it was right in the middle of the Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman match. As you saw, things turned red, the music hit, and then Roman Reigns has that, what's about to happen to me face.
I'm going to be burnt up. That's great stuff. I got to say, the writers, they're doing a great job, especially when you're doing not just nationwide TV, when you're doing worldwide TV to keep everybody at expense. And I like that. I like the way they do things and how they go back. Because I remember back at WCW, you know, everybody was in the office and you had so many people that you thought that was in charge, that wasn't in charge. I remember one time Bobby Eaton, I was downstairs, he's messing with me, and he called me a stooge. And I looked at Bobby, I said, Bobby, just for that, just for you calling me a stooge, whenever I do find out it's in charge, I'm going to tell on you, just because you said that. But to get back to what we was going to, and really, if you wanted to know what happened was on Monday Night Raw, just look at the internet Friday. You already know the whole TV show. Everybody that worked in there already put it on, or they put it out, and that's the secretism of our business that they took away.
I still like to be surprised.
No kidding. That's what it's all about. You know, I don't want to go see a movie with somebody's already told me, or watch watch the baseball game. You record it because you're out working. You want to come home and watch, and you already know the ending, so why watch it?
Give me the surprise, please.
Yeah, baby, please.
Please.
Oh, man.
Well, this weekend, Sunday, WWE Table, Ladders, and Chairs live on WWE Network. As we know, The Shield has reunited, and now, thanks to Kane returning on Raw, The Shield is facing Braun Strowman, The Miz, Cesaro, Sheamus, and Kane in a 5-on-3 handicap match.
Sounds outnumbered to me. I think Kane and him need to get a couple more, don't you?
Yes, I do. Oh, listen, us planting seeds over here.
No. It's really cool, man. And for you people out there knowing, I know you're listening, you know, Kane is Glenn Jacobs. He's running for mayor of Knoxville. Man, I think he's going to make a great one. All my luck's out to him. But, you know what else is going to be happening, too, this Sunday? NXT's going to be in Johnson City, I believe, aren't they?
Rolling into town.
They sure are. So, you guys that not getting the pay-per-view, going up there to Freedom Hall in Johnson City. I think they might have changed the name of that, didn't they? Is it still Freedom Hall?
As far as I know.
Yeah, I just know that. Yeah, shoot.
They made it look really good. Yeah.
Oh, yes, they did. Sure did. To get a chance, go see them, too, man. A lot of excitement, a lot of action, man, when NXT comes to town.
All about the future, planting those seeds. I want to ask you, Ricky Morton, we received a question this week via Twitter. If you have a question, send it to us at Real Ricky Morton and at Scotty is On. Use the hashtag Express Yourself. Paul Skivers asks this one. Ricky Morton, what are your memories of the Tupelo concession stand brawl you were in 1981? And that was you teaming with Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert.
Sure was.
Versus...
The concession stand brawl was Onita, which became a great promoter in Japan, FMW, and Fuji, and their manager, the one and only Tojo Yamamoto. But you see, now we just talked about something a while ago. Have you seen before? The Tupelo concession stand brawl. I guess Me and Eddie Gilbert way down the totem pole. Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee and them, Wayne Ferris and Larry Latham, when they were the Blonde Bombers, they done it. And Ricky and Robert Gibson done it. They might have did it with the Blonde Bombers. I don't know. That's two. I watched it back. God bless his soul. You know, the late, great Eddie Gilbert was in there. Tojo's passed away. If you notice the guy in there, Herman Shetfield, which Tojo grabs and he starts shaking, he was the old promoter there. He's passed away. It was stiff. If you notice and you go back and watch it, the pulling of the pots and pans didn't happen. And even after doing it for the 100th time, we still did good off of it. We still drew people. Let me talk about Eddie Gilbert here for a second. You know, Eddie was way before his time. He grew up here in Lexington, right outside of Memphis, Tennessee. And Eddie started the business when he was young. And that's the reason Eddie and I got to be partners when we came back to Memphis, because I went out to Oklahoma to wrestle for Leroy McGurk. And this is before Bill Watts had the territory. Now, this is in the 70s. Eddie wasn't 18 yet. At that time, now you got to have license and all that stuff out in Oklahoma. And then you didn't. For Jerry Jarrett, you had to have license in Mississippi, Kentucky, and you had to be 18 years old. So I brought Eddie Gilbert out to Oklahoma to be my tag team partner. We were just young kids. You know, and it's like I try to tell a lot of guys here at school and a lot of guys outside the school when I do seminars. They don't ever let nobody tell you can't do nothing. You have to go get it. My wife and I had a Volkswagen truck, matter of fact, with a U-Haul on it. And the Volkswagen truck would barely pull the U-Haul trailer. Me and her loaded that up and we took off to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Great memories, great. But we're getting back to the Tupelo thing. Look here, Scotty, I done went way out here in left field again. We wrestled in Tupelo, Mississippi every Friday night. Unless you was on another, because they ran two towns. But Tupelo actually ran every Friday. Eddie Marlin was the promoter of it. Herman Shetfield, he was another one that helped Eddie. But if you weren't there, you were in Blytheville, Arkansas, up the road, because we all had Memphis TV. Both towns were like 100 miles from Memphis. And we had TV on Saturday morning, so either you'd be in Jonesboro or you'd be in Tupelo. Shot a lot of good angles. Hurt, nasty, was all beat up, bruised to death. I never forget, we went on TV the next day. You had black eyes and everything else. Had a great time doing it. That's our business, man. You gotta give a little, get a little.
38 years ago this week, Sonny King, you just talked about him, was teaming with you versus Terry Gordy and Michael P.S. Hayes, Louisville, Kentucky, at the Louisville Gardens 38 years ago this week.
Wow. But you know, I worked for Nick Goulas. I worked for the Lee Fields out of Mobile, Alabama before that even happened. Just a kid growing up. I don't know, guys, if y'all didn't know Terry Gordy yet. Terry was a big kid, man. I never forget, he's 16 years old. He was the heavyweight champion of a lot of different territories at 16 years old. But he had that magic. He had that knack.
Terry Gordy, he had that look. Massive back then, and the talent to go with it. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's just what I was saying. I mean, when you're working territories, and this is really hard to explain. You might could understand that. When you was in a territory, before you ever got a break, most of the time the booker had to be your friend. You just started in the business, you didn't get a break, especially being 16 years old. I think Frankie Kane, the first one, did. He was booking out of Mississippi. He gave Terry, I think, his first break, made him the champion, and boy, then everybody wanted him. Terry Gordy was outstanding, not only here in the United States, but in Japan. He was really over there. Michael Hayes, man, they were.
Those guys, the Freebirds, they took it to the moon.
Yes, they did. All of us, we all grew up together in the business. Michael, Terry, Robert, me, Bobby Eaton, Stan Lane, Tommy Rich. And a lot of people don't understand this. Way before you had WWF was around, you had Georgia Championship Wrestling. And I might have told you this when I was talking about, in our day, everybody looked forward to going to Georgia Championship Wrestling. Everybody looked forward to going to meet Tommy Rich. Everybody was watching that to see, Tommy Rich was the Hulk Hogan of his time, the John Cena of now. People just don't even realize how over Tommy Rich was and what a great worker he was. In any of you guys out there at the Myrtle Beach area, I guess you go on Tommy Rich's Facebook. I don't know the name of it, but he has a wrestling school right out in Myrtle Beach. We're talking to you live here from the School of Morton, which I have our wrestling school. We talk about it a lot, but it's what I do and what I do. But Tommy Rich is a good trainer, too. Matter of fact, my partner, Robert Gibson, has a great wrestling school right outside of Atlanta, Georgia. in Douglasville, Georgia. APCW, if you want to go on Robert's Facebook. All Pro Championship Wrestling is the name of that in this school of Morton. He's just right outside of Atlanta. Got a great facility. Robert's a good trainer. You know, if you want to make it in our business, you're going to have to learn from somebody that knows what they're doing. I told you before, I don't have all the answers to everything. Nobody does. Because you see, I've been doing this for 44 years, and I still learned. We have school today. Today, something happened, and I learned something. And that's what I try to get into one of my boys. I told one of my boys the other day, I said, and he said something to him. I said, God, how did you do that? He asked me, what do you mean? I mean, how did you learn it all in 3 months? I mean, you just know everything. How'd you do that in 3 months? Was it just a miracle magic? I think he got the hint. Okay.
Before we get to our special guest this week,
yes,
one of the greatest managers of all time. First, I want to tell folks where they can see Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express over the next little bit.
Okay, go on ahead.
So let's start with this Friday, October 20th, and Saturday, October 21st, the Lone Star State of Texas.
I'll be out in Amarillo. I'll be having a seminar that Friday night. If you're out in that area, come out and see it. If you want to learn how to wrestle, come out and do it. I don't mind. If you just want to come in and sit down, you never know. The last time I was giving a seminar, Terry Funk walked in. So you never know. And then we'll have wrestling there on this coming Saturday night. I always look forward to going out there. Only bad thing, I have a lot of memories. One of my great friends, Dennis Stamps, the last show he come to see me there, and since then Dennis has passed away. You know, he had cancer, and you know, I know when I walk in the back door, I'm going to see Dennis standing there. Dennis is a great guy. My friend for 36 years. Dennis was a real cool guy. I like Dennis a lot.
A lot of memories going to be flooding back for a lot of people when you're in Amarillo, Texas, this Friday and Saturday, October 20th, 21st, top of Texas at WrestlePlex. So if you want more info, Facebook at Shane Garrett. And then it's not going to be very long until Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson are headed to Parma, Ohio.
Yes, sir. Sure are. We're looking forward to coming there.
Now, as far as this action, seeing the Rock and Roll Express together in Parma, Ohio on November 11th, CKCW. And I understand you're representing the United States of America because you're going to be taking part in a flag match versus Canada and Puerto Rico. And also on the card, a special attraction match, Billy Gunn versus somebody that's caused some controversy lately, Joey Ryan.
Every match that I do step into, remember when we first got our big break, when we first won the NWA World Tag Team titles? Believe it or not, we wrestled Ivan Koloff and Barry Dorso, the Russians. All of a sudden, was just the All-American kids. But Scotty, let me tell you something. Even if I'm not there representing the United States, I represent the United States every morning when I wake up. That's all day long. This is our country. I love it. I've been around the world enough to know to see other places and understand what such a great place we got here to live. Not everything's right. I'm not into politics. Not everything's right, but not everything's wrong either. I love the United States.
I like what I heard good old JR Jim Ross say one time on Raw. If you don't like it, you can leave it.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
As far as Jim Ross goes, by the way, he has his new book out. He's doing his book tour. He's doing a lot of signings. It's called Slobberknocker. And I understand, Ricky Morton, that Jim Ross is opening up about some very personal things in his life. I haven't read it yet. I hope to very soon.
Jim's been through a lot last year. Wow, it'd probably be a tearjerker, but it's life, and Jim knows, and it's hard to even do anything. There's nothing that nobody can really say to make it better. But I know Jim, and Jim's a man, and I always loved Jim Ross. Gosh, he was another one. We said on our earlier podcast, I knew Jim when he was worked at the radio in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's when me and Eddie Gilbert took out there. Then he started announcing it. It's like, gosh, people asking me, Ricky Morton, when you going to write a book? I guess when everybody dies, because I'm going to have to bury them off. I wrote a book. No. But I wanted to say, following Saturday, Robert and I will be in Lafayette, not Fayetteville, but Lafayette, Tennessee, right above Lebanon, and it's around Nashville. I'm from Nashville, and I have a lot of people. As you say, when are you coming back to Nashville? When are you coming back down to the fairgrounds? I'm not going to be at the fairgrounds. I'm going to be close to Nashville. I'll be in Lafayette. Come on up and see us. Robert and I both will be there, man. We looking forward to doing that.
That's Saturday, October 28th.
Yeah, Saturday, October 28th. Sure is. You go on to Facebook and you can find it.
Also, before we get to our special guest this week, I want to preview the School of Morton action. School of Morton's hitting the road. Your students are going to be wrestling Friday, October 27th, Irwin, Tennessee at the National Guard Armory, bell time 7:30 p.m. that night. And also, your students wrestling again November 5th, a Sunday, at 5 p.m. at the School of Morton at 2085 Chuckey Highway in Chuckey, Tennessee.
Our show's getting out there. If you hadn't got to see the chance, we show a lot of highlights on the School of Morton. Matter of fact, I got a phone call last night, a promoter down in Florida, but he wants to book a School of Morton show in Florida. He said, man, I've seen your students. And here we go. I'm not trying to knock nobody. He said, man, but you got guys that know what they're doing. And that's entertainment.
The future is bright. Also, got to mention it, we're inching ever closer to a couple important things. WrestleCade and Starcade.
Scotty, Sunday we was here at the School of Morton, and it had to be 150 degrees in here. Gosh, I mean, we could have rented this out for
sauna.
a sweat, but yes, I'm just
community
trying
sauna.
It was just like that for some reason. Then I woke up this morning and I had an inch of ice on my windshield. Wow, what crazy weather we have up here in the Tri-Cities area.
It was cold in the mountains this morning.
Yes, it was, buddy.
All right, so a lot of action. Check it out. Details on Facebook at School of Morton, Twitter at Real Ricky Morton.
And then you know what? We got our manager coming up here in a little bit, and throw a little something else at him again. He not only managed one guy, but he managed 4 guys.
Dun, dun, dun.
JJ.
Yes.
Yes, buddy. How you doing? We're live here on on the School of Morton podcast, bud. How you doing?
Good.
What a pleasure it is to have you on the show. We've been plugging you all morning, not saying who's going to be on here, but just saying one of the greatest managers in professional wrestling business. And I want to introduce you right now. He's one of the great talk show hosts here in the Bristol, Tennessee area. His name's Scotty Campbell. And Scotty, say hello to JJ. I know you got a lot to ask him.
Well, I'm going to start off by saying hello, JJ, but everybody's got to get it out there, JJ Dillon, so I might as well real quick. We go all the way back in the world of professional wrestling to Jim Crockett Promotions, Daddy, even before that. You know what I'm saying? Because we all had a mutual friend in the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Absolutely.
JJ, I want to welcome you here to the School of Morton podcast, and I wanted to sit down with you by phone and Ricky Morton here in person. Will you walk us through several things? And one of those is there's a lot of debate on what year you actually started in professional wrestling.
If I tell you that, I'm going to date myself and give my age away. Not that it's a huge secret, but
Okay.
no, I've been a fan since I've been a teenager, and actually I started wrestling in around 68. I had a few matches, and then worked part-time 1970, and then started full-time 1971. And my career lasted like a total of 20 years. But during that period of time, I'm best remembered as the leader of the Four Horsemen, which was the pinnacle of my career. But over that 20-year span, I actually had 3,200 matches. So I started as a referee back when I was in college, and I refereed for like 8 years. So I always look at being a fan enabled me to be a good referee. Being a good referee enabled me to have an active career, first 5 years full-time before I even met the Mongolian Stomper and started my managerial career. And then I feel that being a referee, then being a wrestler, then being a manager has enabled me to have longevity at the executive level too. So when you look at the body of my work, I guess I've pretty much done it all.
For sure. Now, JJ Dillon, we received a question from Ryan Fletcher via Twitter, and he was wanting to know memories from you of your time with the Mongolian Stomper, and Ryan said that his father was a major fan of the Mongolian Stomper.
Yeah, I was too. He was an awesome athlete, trained. He was an animal when it came to training, and very intense individual. And I met him the first time in the Canadian Maritimes when I went up there and got my break and actually wrestled him for a couple of weeks. And then from there I went to Amarillo for a year with the Funks, and then went to Florida after that. When I got to Florida, Stomper was already there, and he left with Bearcat Wright, went up to Tennessee. I continued to stay on, and then things didn't work out with Bearcat, and he called me one day and said, I got to get out of here, and I've got a top spot in Dallas, but I don't have a manager. Have you ever given any thought to that? Which I had. So he said, well, Fritz von Erich owned it. Red Bastien was the booker at that time, and you'd be walking into a top spot. Of course, I said, well, I'm committed to Eddie Graham, and who I consider my mentor and somebody that I was just thrilled to death to be, wrestling under his mentorship. And so I said I'd have to talk to Eddie, and of course Eddie was very understanding and willing to do anything to help me further my career. And so that's how I ended up with Dallas and started as a manager. That had been about 1978, something like that.
Well, that's cool. JJ, it's Ricky. First of all, I just want to say thank you for this weekend. I had a wonderful time.
Yeah, I enjoy going out on the road too. It's funny, we go to those small high schools, and it's like I could close my eyes and just wander back, and all of a sudden open my eyes, and I could be sitting there in that dressing room as a young kid, just thrilled to finally have my foot in the door and go out there and to see how receptive the audiences are. And with you and Robert, I mean, you're icons in our business, and to come out there and be able to see the response that after all of these years, it's like you could do it forever. I think you're so good at what you do. I think you could get out of a wheelchair and go in the ring and excite a crowd and light them up on fire. And it's for somebody that spent their whole life in the wrestling business and loves the business. It's exciting for me just to watch somebody have that kind of control over an audience.
Well, JJ, thank you. Like you said, I have been doing it forever. It's all I ever knew, and all I want to know. And that's the same thing I was going to say to you, man. It was great. In our day, we don't need to go step by step, and that's just like I told the guys the other night. I said, man, just hand JJ that mic. That's all you got to do. And man,
yeah. Well, when you start out, you work hard, and you have to work hard to get your foot in the door and establish yourself. And then once you've done that, you learn, well, if I'm going to have longevity, if I work this hard every night, I'm going to burn out. And so then you learn to work smart.
What I really need to do is to book you here for a seminar at School of Morton, before you could please make my kids understand that. I'll be gone on the road for a couple of weeks, and I'll come out, look here, they have a cannon around back fixing to shoot somebody out of it. But they just don't even understand, JJ, sometimes it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And again, we had a great crowd, a great response. Yeah. But it's
how you do it, and the timing of knowing when to do it. And I'm kind of the old school philosophy is less is more. You can do less, but if you do the right thing at the right time, you're going to get so much more response than if you're going out there 60 miles an hour trying to get the people revved up. They're there. They want to be entertained, and once you get that figured out, then you learn how to work smart.
Yes, sir.
And obviously you and Robert have done that, and that's why you're still on top after all these years.
Well, thank you, JJ. I really appreciate that. And you were speaking earlier, I never got that opportunity to wrestle you. Now, work with you with the Four Horsemen. I couldn't count how many times. Thank you for all the years, and thank you for, and I learned from you too. I don't know if you realize that. When you're a young kid in the business and you're working on top and you're working with the Four Horsemen, you watch everything. And believe it or not, I was telling my young kids here too, you was talking about refereeing earlier. I told these guys, man, once you get in there and referee a couple of matches and listen to these guys when they're in the ring, it'll help you so much. But it's like talking to a brick wall sometimes.
I was never formally trained by anybody, and where I learned the psychology of the business was as a referee. And you get in there against the greats of the business, you can learn more by just being in there and seeing what they do and when they do it and how they do it, and look up and see the reaction of the crowd. And you can get an education without ever, putting on the tights, and that comes along later. And if you're smart enough to observe what's going on, to digest what's going on, and you said something a few minutes ago that's very important. you said you're still learning. I am still learning. I've been around the business for half a century, and I am still learning. I go to a town like the other night, and I see some little thing, and maybe part of it is something that, okay, maybe you learned it earlier, but then you have a tendency sometimes to forget a lot of things. And you get out there, and then you're reminded that how simple the business really is. And I come back to the less is more. It's knowing what to do, when to do it, and that's the key to our business. And obviously, you've mastered that for many, many years. Like, again, that's why you're still on top, and why I go to these towns and who's in the main event tonight. And they said, well, the Rock and Roll Express. And before I ever walked in, they said, oh, by the way, it's already sold out tonight. And this is a couple hours before bell time. So
what a compliment.
That's what it's all about, man.
Yes,
that's what
sir.
It's all about.
Thank you, JJ.
And JJ Dillon, I wanted to walk back with you down memory lane. And will you tell us how you arrived at Jim Crockett Promotions?
Well, it was my dream. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm from the land of the Giants. And I used to go to Madison Square Garden and see all these big monsters, and wanted to break into the business. And the original Sheik, Eddie Farhat, came in to challenge Bruno Sammartino for a series of matches. And just talking to him casually in the dressing room, I said, well, my real dream was to be a wrestler someday. And he said, well, I promote. At that point, he was promoting in Ohio and in Michigan. And he said, well, come on out, man, and bring your tights, and we'll put you in the ring, and hey, see what happens. So I took him up on it. And it was my parents lived in Detroit, and my father worked for General Motors. And so I had a place to stay, and I went out to visit them. I had a job at the time, but I had like a long weekend, and went out there, and I worked TV matches the first time around. And he said, hey, you can come back anytime you want. And so a year later, I took like I took a week's vacation with weekends on both ends and a holiday. So I had like 10 days, and called him, and Eddie again was good to his word, and he booked me now, not just TVs, but worked, arenas, which is a whole new experience. And I had 3 or 4 matches with an old timer named Pedro Godoy. And I learned so much just working with him. I remember I'd never actually body slammed anybody, and he called for a slam, and I picked him up, and I was so no confidence at all. And I almost lost him and almost dropped him on his head. And I remember thinking, oh my God, he's going to get up and he's going to want to kill me. And I got it coming. And we went back to the dressing room, and he said, come here. He said, slam me. Pick me up. And I thought, well, I tried. And he said, no, that's the problem. He said, you got to get your body chest to chest with mine, and you got to get in deep. And then he said, once you do that, our bodies are in sync. And he said, you just turn me over, and all of a sudden there I am. And he said, pick me up. And it was so simple. And then put me down, pick me up again. And then the next night he called that move again. And he said, once you get up there, all you got to do is let gravity take over, and a beautiful, perfect bump. So that was the beginning of my education. And I moved over close to Niles, Ohio, which Bruno Sammartino ran on weekends. So I had known Bruno from all those years as a referee, and he said, well, he told Ace Freeman, who was doing the booking at the time, with an old timer named Rudy Miller, and he said, I want him booked every weekend starting now. He said, if you have to add a match. And so I spent a year with some great, great talent that could have gone on the road anywhere and made a good living, but most of them had jobs and loved what they were doing. And Jim Grabmeyer lived in Springfield, Ohio, and he would work around Pittsburgh and Michigan in the winter months, and then in the summer he would go down to Charlotte because Crockett would expand their roster, and this is when Jim Sr. was alive, and they would run outdoor shows. And so he left and went down there, and a week or two went by, and I got a phone call out of the blue. He said, I'm down in Charlotte, and he said, they're short on talent. And he said, you said this was your dream, and I took one of your pictures with me, and he said, based on my recommendation, and this was like on a Friday night, he said, if you could be here Monday and start in Park Center. He said, this is what you wanted to do. So, wow, I ended up quitting my job, packed everything I had in an old beat-up Chevy, and I'd never been south of Richmond, Virginia, and drove to Charlotte. And my first match was in Park Center in 1971 against Gene Anderson, and I never looked back.
And JJ Dillon, I know that you worked hard, and you're telling us right now that you learned so many key elements along the way. And along that journey, you had, what was it, a 5-year run in the Carolinas starting in '84?
Yeah, that was later on. My first time through there was 1971, and I was there about 2.5 years. And I've been so lucky. I had help every step of the way. And at that point, I wasn't a kid. I was 28, closer to my 29th birthday, starting full time in the business. But Johnny Weaver, the late Johnny Weaver, God bless him, he helped me. Sandy Scott, Art Nelson. These were guys that were old timers. Johnny Heidemann, and they saw that I was hungry and that was anxious to learn. And when I go into the dressing room, I never walked in there to say, well, hey, how about if we do this tonight? I would go in there, and the only words out of my mouth is, tell me what you want me to do tonight. And I'd shut up. And so without realizing it till later, I earned their immediate respect because I wanted them to tell me what to do. I wasn't going to try to tell them because I didn't have the experience. So they helped me. And God, Les Thatcher was there at the time, and they teamed us together, and Les was one of the great teachers in the business, still is. Took me under his wing and taught me the right way to be a professional full-time on the road. And Dory Funk came in to defend his title, and while I was there, he saw me, and he said, well, I got to be careful. I can't come in to defend the title and steal talent. But he said, whenever you're ready to leave, he said, I would love to have you come to Amarillo. And he said, you would do well. And then a little time after that, they had a big show in Greensboro, and Terry Funk came in, and along with Dory Funk Sr., the only time that I ever met him, they came in for a tag match under title defense from Dory. And Dory said, come on over to the hotel in Greensboro. I'd like you to meet my father and my brother. And now the three of them said, hey, when you're done here, you need to come to Amarillo. You do well, and you'll get a couple of tours of Japan out of it. And that's how it played out. And that was the beginning of my active career. And after 5 years, I ended up down in Florida, and Stomper called me and said, hey, have you ever thought of managing? Which I said no, and ended up going to Dallas. And so it's kind of like in life, and the wrestling business mirrors life, that as one door closes behind you, another one opens in front of you.
And it surely does, JJ. And speaking of Amarillo, I am there this Saturday night in Amarillo, Texas. And last time I was there, I was giving a seminar, and Terry Funk walked right in and took over. And but he had a great time. And gosh, and you speaking of, like you saying earlier, sometimes in our business, it's being at the right place at the right time.
Absolutely.
I did the same thing. I started back when you had territories, and I'm talking about Leroy McGurk, Bug Igo. Finally, I went back to Memphis, and Bill Watt seen us, and it's the same way you were talking about. Robert and I were really doing good in Louisiana, but, Ric Flair come in and seen us and come back and told Jimmy Crockett about us and Dusty, and Jimmy came down, and Dusty did, and I never forget when we started in the Carolinas. It was one of the most memorable things in the business for me is coming in that night, but not only, working with people that, like you said, you didn't have to say nothing then. I get this question asked to me all the time: who's the best wrestler you've been in the ring with? And I tell them all of them. All of them were great. They were just, everybody had a different job. Everybody had a different job, and they needed their position.
Look at the level of talent that was in the Carolinas in the 80s, and if I knew nothing about booking and somebody had money to start a territory, I'd say just give me that talent roster that was there in the Carolinas.
But JJ, besides that, what a family we had.
I will guarantee you, I'm going to do sellouts every night because you couldn't miss with the caliber of talent that was there.
Yeah, but we had a great family there. We sure did.
We were a family. That is exactly right. We were a family.
And you notice it wasn't a drama scene. It wasn't none of that. We all knew our jobs. We all knew what to do. I have people ask me all the time. They say so-and-so. I said, yeah, but so-and-so guy, even though he might have been the first match, he's one of the greatest workers I ever stepped in the ring with. And all of them were like that. And thank you. And Scotty, you got something else for JJ?
Well, I do. And JJ, I wanted to focus a bit on your time. I understand you worked some as Dusty Rhodes' assistant while in the Carolinas. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, actually, it started well before that. I was, like I say, 28 going on 29 when I started full time. And so I realized that Father Time was not on my side, that if I was going to have any longevity in the business, you know, I couldn't have special matches on the card with Precious Paul Ellering for the rest of my life. So I had to start paying attention to the creative side of the business, to television production, to matchmaking. And a lot of guys focus on just which is nothing wrong with that, but just their match and being the best they could be, which I wanted to do that. But I looked at the bigger picture, knowing that the time would have to come where if I was going to have a future, that's the direction that would have to take. So every territory that I worked in, I was around some of the great minds in the business. I had a chance to work with Eddie Graham. I had a chance to work with Bob Geigel. I was around Fritz Von Erich and Red Bastien, around Johnny Weaver, Art Nelson. And everywhere that I went, I absorbed knowledge, kind of like a craftsman with your toolbox. The more tools you have in there, no matter what job is in front of you, if you have the tools and know how to use them, you got a better chance of being successful. And that was kind of my outlook. And just, you know, I was blessed to have the chance to work around some of the great minds and absorb their knowledge. And it ended up all of a sudden, you know, 20 some years goes by and I retire and then had longevity after. I was a vice president of talent relations for 8 years with Vince McMahon, and I'd started with Vince's father as a referee in college. So I went from McMahon to McMahon, and then ended up with Ted Turner's organization for 5 years. And my career wound down, and all of a sudden, you know, I look some days, and here I am wearing 2 Hall of Fame rings. And when it all started with me, Hall of Fame was Cooperstown in baseball. There were no wrestling Hall of Fames. So I just am so thankful that I have been to make it in the business. And Ricky, you understand what I'm saying because you're from a business, you know, your family with the business. That you have to first you have to love it because it's not easy. And in the beginning, there's going to be a lot of disappointments. There's going to be speed bumps, and you can very easily get discouraged and say, "Oh man, this is not worth it for me." But if you love it and you hang in there and you persevere, there's people who will see that and want to help you. And then you get help from people, and then that's how your career goes. And then the one thing that you have no control over, and Ricky, you said this a little bit earlier, and it is so true. For guys that have had success in the business, they had the good fortune to have done all those other things, to have passion for the business, to persevere through the hard times, to learn from everybody around them. And then it's just a good fortune to be in the right place at the right time when an opportunity presents itself, recognizing that opportunity and being able to take advantage of it.
Well, great, JJ. You know what, man? I just want to tell you, after all the years, I see you a lot. Thank you for all the years for being my friend. Thank you thank you for just being JJ. I mean, people only notice. You. Sir?
I thank you because you and I are smart enough to know that the business has been very kind to us, and we've been able to do everything for our families because the business has been kind to us. And I'm of the mindset that you are. I like to pass it on to the young guys. You know, anybody that says, "Hey, will you watch my match tonight? Is there anything that you could tell me that I could do better?" I never brush those guys off because somebody did it for me. And I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning after being around the business for near 50 years. I'm still learning.
But me too, JJ. And I didn't want to cut you off here, but that's why we're coming to you from my wrestling school. And if you get a chance, JJ, I don't know. I tell everybody on Facebook, the School of Morton, just go on and look at it, see what all we do here. And it's like you said, I preach to them every day about the basics. I preach to them about every day, how to take care of your opponent. You don't got to go out here and do this or do that, man. Just right now, just to entertain them, JJ. Give the people their money's worth. And that's what's the most important thing there is.
The other thing that you got to do is when you're in the ring in a sold-out house, and I had a chance to speak to the crowd in that little town where we were the other night, and I was speaking from the heart when I said that the secret to all of it are those people that sit out there who support us, cheer for us, boo us if they don't like us, but they pay their hard-earned money to buy a ticket. And if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have a business.
No, we sure wouldn't.
And, JJ, I also wanted to get some insight from you about your time working for Vince McMahon from, 89 until about 1996. I'm just curious, you had a unique opportunity that very few people in the business ever earn. And having been in those territories for so many years and then going to work for the WWF, now of course WWE, how was a week in the life, if you don't mind sharing, in terms of what days were you and Vince and Pat Patterson side by side?
Well, I would be in the office. Vince, I will say this much about Vince McMahon. He's a workaholic, and he lives and eats wrestling 24/7. He used to have a legal pad at his bedside with a pencil on top of it. And if he'd wake up in the middle of the night with an idea, he'd turn the light on and quick jot it down for fear that come morning he would forget. And that Vince, for all his success, and there's people who knock him, don't like him, but he's built an empire. And a lot of people don't know that he declared bankruptcy 2 times before he ever made it. So he bought the business from his father. His father didn't give it to him. And he had a couple points where he failed and had to start over. And he just had a vision. He's the one guy that realized that cable television changed the industry and that going national and going international was the future of the business. And the guys that had the little territories, they didn't understand that. And I remember when cable first came, all of the guys, and I don't remember Ricky, if you were there or remember then, but they had a big show up in the Meadowlands, and all of the promoters, Eddie Graham was there, Jimmy Crockett was there, Fritz von Erich was there, Jerry Jarrett was there. All of the promoters from everywhere were there, and they realized that all of their little territories couldn't survive in and of themselves anymore because they survived and flourished because they controlled their own television product. And the television product with Eddie Graham was like Jack Briscoe and amateur wrestling and credibility. You went up to the Sheik in Detroit and it was balls to the wall, man. It was wild and as crazy as you could get it with Bull Curry and the Sheik and Bobo Brazil. And if you went to Memphis, it was somewhere in between with a little bit of both with Jarrett and Lawler. And all of a sudden it changed now because the guys didn't have control over their television because the superstation was the future, and it was going to be national. And Vince McMahon realized that, and he went to all the territories, bought up the syndicated TV time, and hired all the top stars away, including Hulk Hogan. And then he was the first one to have that vision, went national, and that's why he is where he is today, because he had that foresight.
JJ, I also would like to know, I've wondered this for a long time, when you were working for Vince McMahon hand in hand, day and night, I would imagine, probably some poolside weekends, was Bruce Pritchard a large part of the picture at that point in time?
He was more towards the end. And as I moved on, I was there for, like I say, you said 80, first part of 89 through 96. And I never really answered your question before, that I would go to the office every day, and Vince would be in the office, suit and tie on. I had a suit and tie on, and Vince was hands-on with everything. If they had a poster for a pay-per-view to publicize it, he would approve that poster. And it was the attention to detail. I remember they had a big thing where Hulk is in the middle of the ring. They freeze him where he's tearing the shirt, the Hulk jersey. And he's in the ring, so behind him are a sold-out crowd. Now, if anybody's ever been to a wrestling event and you shoot from the beauty shot up in the stands at the rest of the arena, there's never a time when every seat is filled. Somebody either gets up to go to the bathroom or they get up to go get popcorn. And Vince, when he would shoot that shot, if there was an empty seat somewhere, he would have an artist take and fix it so that every seat was full. That was where his attention to detail was. And after all those years in the business, I still stopped learning from Vince McMahon because he was still learning, and I was absorbing from him. So I was in the office all week, and all of the creative was done at his home on weekends. And I would go out to his house with Pat Patterson, and we would sit in casual clothes. In the summer, we'd be out. He had like a pool where I watched Stephanie and Shane grow up, and he had a veranda out there with a bank of phones, and that's where we would work out there. And in the wintertime, we'd work in his formal dining room Saturday and Sunday, and then we would stay and eat dinner at his home around the dinner table with Vince, Linda. They had a woman, an Oriental woman that was their housekeeper, and she cooked meals. And if Shane was there, or Stephanie was there, we would sit and have dinner with them too. So it was a wonderful time in the business, and I was still learning at that point. And I have to give credit to Vince McMahon. Everything that he's had, his success, is because he had the vision, was willing to work for it, and he's earned all the success he had.
And JJ, when you were running talent relations, now you and a lot of other people have talked about Vince McMahon being so hands-on. What would happen if a talent came up to you and said, JJ Dillon, I'm ready to take a vacation?
Well, first of all, Vince was the final say on everything. A lot of people didn't realize that. And Pat Patterson was probably the closest to Vince McMahon in terms of, having some influence because Pat had been so successful in all aspects of the business. I would be asked to voice my opinion. I would give him my opinion. But in the end, it was like if you have three people sitting around and say, what do you think? What do you think? Vince would process all that information, and then he would make the decision, and then we would go from there. And it was a formula that worked very well. And I continued to learn from that experience.
Also, JJ, longevity in the business. You look at the young guys today, the young gals. If you had their ear for a few minutes, a minute or two, whatever you want to take, what would you tell those young people that want JJ Dillon style longevity in wrestling sports entertainment?
I would tell them that the day that you think that you've got it all figured out and you know it all, I would pack your bag right then and there, close it up, and go home and get out of the business. Because the business is like anything else in life or any other business. It's forever changing, and you have to be flexible to change with it. And Ricky and Robert have been flexible to change. Yes, their look, when they go in the ring, they could go in the ring and probably do a third of what they do because they are the Rock and Roll Express. But they've got a thing inside of them that's burning that says, these people in this high school tonight paid good hard-earned money to buy a ticket to be here with an expectation of what was going to happen when that bell rang. And if I don't go out there and live up to that, then I've let them down, I've let myself down, and it would be time to get out of the business. And I watch. I go out there and I watch. And the Rock and Roll Express are still main eventers in this business because that's their mindset. They go out there every night, big town, small town, knowing, and that's why it's exciting to know that Ricky has his own school, because he has an encyclopedia of knowledge of all these years that he's willing to pass on to young people. Now the onus is on these young people to be smart enough to keep their mouth shut, listen to him, ask questions, not offer answers, but ask questions, and let Ricky give you the answer. And if you're smart, you'll just nod your head yes and put that in your toolbox. And
JJ,
if you're willing to work and have the right attitude, hey, the wrestling business is still the greatest in the world in terms of opportunity, and you're going to get out of it what you put into it.
That's funny. You just said that, and And thank you very much for the compliment. But I was telling Scotty earlier about one of the kids Sunday. We were training here. I told him, I says, how did you do this? I mean, you just got me. I mean, you have learned our business in 3 months. Everything there is to know, you know it. You don't have to. I think he got the message after a while. But JJ, man, let me tell you, I'd like to bring you back again one day. I know that you're busy.
I'd love to come back, and I'm honored that you spoke to me and invited me to come on your podcast and be a guest.
JJ, I haven't heard you on many podcasts, and I wanted you here because everybody does. Man, you're a great icon in our business, and I appreciate it very much, JJ. I'm always around. I know I'll see you somewhere pretty soon. And until then, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for explaining a lot of things.
And thank you for all you've done in the business, and for having a school to take young guys and teaching them the right way, and caring enough to give that back to the business, because you could take all the knowledge you have and continue to work, and you don't have to go out and share that with other people. And I respect you so much because somebody gave it to you, and now you're passing it on, and that's kind of my mindset, what I try to do too. So I've really enjoyed coming on here and talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you. And we never say goodbye in our business. We say see you down the road.
Yes, sir. We sure do. JJ, I'll see you down the road.
God bless you, man.
Thank you, JJ Dillon. Also encourage you to check out JJ Dillon's podcast, JJ Dillon Show, now on MLWRadio.com, among many others on there, including Bruce Pritchard's, Cornette's. What a great conversation that was, Ricky Morton.
Man, I had a great time, Scotty. Just can't wait till next week. We can do it all over again. And to everybody out there, I want to tell you, man, thank you for listening. Hope to hear you, see you to some of the shows. Come up and tell me hi. And hope you listen to us every week. Good night.
She said, Rama, Lama, Bama, Lama, rock and roll is king.